Okay, we're going to watch Andrew Wilson debate this young lady in regards to force doctrine and whether or not rights exist. I disagree with Andrew Wilson on this. I'm trying to debunk him as we go along. I'm trying to do a better job of staying on point, as I've been accused of straw manning him in the past. So I'm going to try and do a better job staying on point, staying with within the realm of rights, whether or not they exist, are they a social construct, and trying to debunk those specific claims. And let's just get right into
Just
it.
the way that the rights are protected.
Well, it's the only way they can really exist.
No, they do exist. You admitted that concepts exist, right? So like somebody can
I can grant that they exist, sure.
Right. So they do exist without force, quote unquote.
Well, no, not actualizing them though.
Actualize. So you didn't get clear what you mean by actualizing.
Yeah. So if you want to have the right to freedom of speech and there's nobody around,
This is an argument he makes
I
a lot.
suppose you would have the right to freedom of speech because you're the only mind which has this concept in it. But if you come into contact with another mind who says you don't have the right to freedom of speech, right? How do we determine which mind actually has a right here and which one doesn't? We can't, right? We just say you have a concept in your mind and you have a concept in your mind. But this rights thing, right? This thing doesn't really exist. Just this concept is what exists.
Okay, that's not accurate. It's not just a concept in my mind. It is an action I can take that places no obligation on anyone else. That's an inherent right, a negative right. Okay, he's arguing against that, the existence of an inherent right. Not all rights, not positive rights, not the right to food and housing and health care. He understands that those aren't rights. What he's arguing against is the fact that if he can engage in force on me and stop me from engaging in what you are actively observing right now, which is freedom of speech, then the right no longer exists because he can prevent it from happening. Okay. The problem with this argument is that you don't have to take action or engage in force against that which does not exist. You don't have to take force against a concept of the mind. My child thinks that there is a monster in his closet. I don't need to engage in any force. That is simply a concept in his mind that does not exist in reality. Free expression, freedom of speech, privacy, all those things exist in the world in the complete absence of force. And in fact, if there was no force, these rights would be practiced globally, unimpinged by anyone, with no force, with no enforcement whatsoever. It takes force to stop it from happening. Therefore, it exists.
You keep saying it doesn't really exist. Of course it exists. Like you said, if you're on the island and nobody's there to infringe upon that right, even if somebody does infringe upon that right, you could still say, well, that person has the right to life. They have the right to speech.
Then people have the right to kill other people if they want to.
Well, that's not what I said.
And it's just an insane hyperbolic take. People, therefore, I have the right to speak, therefore I have the right to kill people, because if I'm capable of doing it, I have the right to do it. No, not if you believe in inherent rights, not if you understand how an inherent right works. I cannot harm you. I cannot take action against you and then claim that because I was capable of engaging in this action, I have the right to do it. And because I was able to prevent you from doing something which placed no obligation and involved no force against me, you don't have the right to do that. That's not how rights work. And like I said, it's an action. It's an observable thing in society that you have to take action against to stop. But he comes back to that over and over and over again. You can do this thing as long as there is no force. So his argument for force doctrine is that rights only exist if you can enforce them. Absent force, rights don't exist. It's absolutely backwards. Absent force, rights exist. It takes force to stop rights from being exercised.
No, it is what you're saying.
They would.
It's
to
an
them,
extension of what you're
that
saying.
statement would be true.
Okay.
To them.
If it is the case that collectively society decides that they have a right to enslave women,
This goes to this enslaved
they
women
do
thing. It's
in
such
fact
a weird
have
thing.
that right in reality to do that, don't they?
If you're saying that they're acting on what they believe is to be a right, then yeah. That's what they're doing. That's trivially
So then
true.
what
but
is...
that doesn't... So
so
these
then
are
what is-
descriptive claims, though.
Yeah.
I'm not interested
well,
in
right now
descriptive
we're just
claims.
making sure that we have this...
Okay, so let's be clear. He's talking about if I believe I have the right to enslave women collectively as men, then I have that right, and I can go and let's take this away from such an insanely stupid argument. By the way, in the worst places in the world, in the worst, most fundamental Islamic places in the world where they exercise the maximum possible amount of force against women, there is still dissent. They are still not able to completely obliterate this right from being exercised and from happening. So even in his scenario of we've decided universally as men we're going to oppress women, even in that scenario, the right for women to do things still exist. It's just greatly suppressed, but it's still there. That freedom of expression, privacy, those things still exist. They're just greatly infringed upon.
So I just want to make sure I got this right and that we're not speaking past each other. Rights are real as concepts. Concepts are real.
But we have to step away from the idea of it just being a concept first, and that is that exercising of inherent rights, of negative rights, is something that we can observe in the world every day. And that in order to prevent it, you have to take action against it. Okay. So when he talks about enslaving all women, he's saying that I can take this positive action against you and take this thing away from you. Women are free inherently. That is the inherent nature until such time. Everybody is free inherently until someone engages in force. Again, he goes on to talk about the fact that you need force in order for rights to exist. But in the complete absence of force, globally, no matter how many people are around, these rights will manifest themselves naturally without placing an imposition on anyone else.
Yes. So therefore, if it is the case that conceptually people want to enslave all women, and they call that concept a right, then they would have the right to enslave women, and that would be a real right that they would have, right?
To them?
Yes.
What you're missing is the index. So, like, when I say I have...
No, it wouldn't be a real right that they would have just because they believe that they have the ability to do it. It wouldn't be a real right that they have even if they have the capability to do it. That is not what makes a right a right. A right is something that exists. I don't know how much clearer to make this. A right is something that exists in the absence of force, not through the enactment of force.
A right, I am talking, like I said, about more so a belief or a value sometimes is what I'm referencing. So when somebody says, like, even if someone was in prison wrongfully, maybe, like they didn't actually commit a crime, but it was believed that they committed a crime. And that,
so the person in prison example is a great example of how she's just not using the definition properly. She's getting close here, but a person in prison has had an action taken upon them. They were free. They were not imprisoned. They were inherently free. They were in the world, observably free, until force entered the picture. They were not enforcing their freedom upon anyone else. They were simply existing inherently as a human being until force entered the picture. So the idea of force doctrine, again, is that without force, you can't defend rights. Now, in the absence of force, rights simply materialize inherently as part of our human condition, as part of the way that we function. The last point I'm going to make on this real quick is that Andrew Wilson is a Christian. And it is a cornerstone of Christianity that man has free will, inherent freedom, inherent rights to live his life as he sees fit. God is the ultimate power in the view of a Christian. And should he desire, he could force your heart open and make you believe. Jesus does not force you to believe in him. Jesus invites you. This is why Eve was able to bite the apple. This is why sin exists, because God inherently granted us free will. The idea that we can freely exercise and guide our lives the way we see fit, and then he gives us opportunities to choose freely to follow him. So his view, even in the purview of his Christian beliefs, is hypocritical and is completely non-compatible with Western civilization. His idea that rights aren't inherent and don't exist puts him far closer to Islamic fundamentalists than it does to the Christian beliefs that he claims to hold so true. If you look at the most fundamental Christians in the United States, I would point to the Amish. And the Amish believe what they believe, but nobody is forced to participate in the Amish community. They are free to leave because that is a cornerstone of Christian belief. So to summarize, force doctrine is silly because rights exist in the absence of force, it takes force to prevent rights from happening. We don't have to enforce rights. We may have to defend them, but it takes force to stop a right. And you don't need to use force against something that doesn't exist. And he's a hypocrite because at the core of Christianity, God himself has granted humanity free will. So I don't know where he gets this worldview of his from. I know he's got a lot of acolytes out there, but this is a dangerous way of viewing the world. And it's truly is completely incompatible with Western civilization.